Hello guys and welcome back to the channel for another weekly what I've watched, and we are in December, the last month of the year. Can you believe it already? Let's not waste any time, just let's get kicked off with what I watched this week. Okay, let me move over, we'll have it here. And the first movie, let me try and go back. Yes, right, the first movie that I watched this week this isn't really a movie, it is a documentary called The Penalty. Now we all know how I feel about true crime, it's something I'm obsessed by. This follows 3 different people's journey surrounding the whole idea of the death penalty. Journeys of recovery, discovery, rebellion find themselves in centre stage in the biggest capital punishment crisis in modern memory. Now, I didn't finish this, full disclosure. I watched about 3/4 of it. I found it really surface, really dull. I didn't feel it got deep enough. When we're talking about a subject like this, you know, we could be getting proper deep into this, and I don't feel it did. It just seemed to stay on the surface with all 3 people and cover the same ground over and over again, and not really the ground you wanted to hear covered, like the proper crux of how people feel about this. But I wouldn't recommend particularly. I give that a 2 out of 5. The same evening I watched, this has been on my watch list for ages, and I love Tom Hanks, I adore the man. This is one where the subject matter doesn't really appeal to me. It's about it's called Greyhound. It's about boats that were sent in from America to bring supplies to Allied forces during the war. And the only thing more dangerous in the front line was the fight to get there. So this covers Tom Hanks's character, who is a first-time captain of what type of boat is it? Convoy of Allied ships carrying thousands of soldiers across the treacherous waters of the Black Pit on the front lines of World War II. They had no air cover for 5 days. The captain and his convoy must battle the surrounding enemy Nazi U-boats. So this is a war movie set at sea. It doesn't have an awful lot of action in. You know, if you're looking for Platoon, Saving Private Ryan, you're not going to get it here. But if you're looking for a psychological, real hard hitter like The Thin Red Line, you're not going to get that here either. This was an okay movie. I do love Tom Hanks, as I've already said. I don't feel he ever turns in a bad performance, but I find this movie quite dull. And I hate to say that because I love Tom Hanks, but I just feel we needed more of a psychological gut punch, or we needed a little bit more in the line of action of what was happening. I'm not going to say it was a bad movie. It isn't a bad movie. It just wasn't really, it didn't blow me away, and I expected it to. I give that a 3 out of 5. It means I enjoyed it. I didn't love it. Same evening I watched, and I've actually reviewed this. I've written, I've never witnessed such an incredible performance from one so young. Haunting. So this is, I believe, a Czech movie. I really apologise if I'm wrong. This is one that I had to watch for a movie club that I'm in with friends. It's one set during the war. I'll read it to you. The invasion of a village in Belarusia by German forces sends young Floria into the forest to join the weary resistance fighters against his family's wishes. He's a young boy, early teens. He joins the resistance. There he meets a girl, Glasha, who accompanies him back to his village. On returning home, he finds his family and fellow peasants massacred. His continued survival amidst the brutal debris of war becomes increasingly nightmarish, a battle between despair and hope. Okay, I watched this movie, and as I was watching it, I was struggling at the beginning to see why there was such critical acclaim. Let me just see. There, I've just scrolled down so you can see the scores that people have given it here. That whole page is 5 stars. So, it was a bit trippy in places. It is very psychologically brutal. It's, as the movie goes on, the performance this young lad turns in takes your breath away. He completely transforms physically during this movie, and by that, the expressions on this young lad's face as we near the end of this movie will stay with me forever. They're completely haunting. It's not any more brutal than any other movie you would have seen, and if you read up about this before you watch it, it would have you believe it's one of the most horrendous things you'll ever have seen. Psychologically, it's a gut punch. There are places in this that it is a bit odd, a bit weird, that I wasn't very keen on the certain style in places, but if you persist and watch to the end of this movie and see what happened to these people during the war, the real winner here is this young lad's change over the movie, from this young, innocent, energetic young boy wanting to join to help to fight the Nazis, and where that goes, it's just, his performance is stunning. I don't think I've ever seen in a child actor such an amazing performance. I would thoroughly recommend, if you can stomach, and I don't mean gory stuff, if you can deal with a real psychological difficult film to watch. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I didn't give it the full 5 because there were scenes within it that were a bit trippy and a bit, it's just not my cup of tea. I would have liked just the more serious edge the whole way through. If you watch it, you'll know what I mean, but it's an amazing film. People say it's one you must watch, and it is one you must watch, and it had gone completely under my radar. I have no idea why. So the following evening I watched Coming Home in the Dark. I think this is on Netflix at the minute. All that evil requires is for good men to do nothing. Something I very much believe in, actually. The bystander effect is something, I'll maybe talk about that in a video at some stage, but it does my head in. A school teacher is forced to confront a brutal act from his past when a pair of ruthless drifters text him and his family on a nightmare road trip. This had the potential to be excellent. There are pieces of acting in this that are pretty poor. I loved the idea of this. It was really harrowing in places, and you really could get a grasp of how the people that are going through hell must feel in this. It is quite shocking in places, the brutality, again, not in a gory sense, but just the complete lack of any empathy from these individuals that we're following. It is a decent movie. It's not, you're not going to watch it and feel like you've completely wasted your time, but it's not amazing, and it had the potential to be amazing. I give it a 2.5 out of 5 because I was disappointed that they didn't make the most of the potential that I felt this movie had. Let's see other reviews. So Sean gave this a 3.5, so he must have really enjoyed it. Austin Burke gave it a 3.5. Dan, the Upside Dan, gave it a 4. So he's got a YouTube review linked there as well. So yeah, Emma from Spooky Astronauts gave it the same as me, a 2.5. So yeah, check it out. If I say, you'll not feel like you've wasted your time, but you will feel this movie could have done so much more than it did. Okay, on the first right, this, oh my goodness, I can't say enough good things about this movie. Somebody somewhere was having a conversation and mentioned this movie. I don't know if it was on a live stream I watched or if it was in a comment on a movie page, I cannot remember. Christopher Plummer, what they were talking about, and this movie came up called Remember. Now, I'm not going to tell you hardly anything about this. I love this, the performances, the story, the pacing. This is a movie about an elderly man in a care home with the starts of dementia who gets a bit confused and who sets out on a journey. He escapes the care home and he sets, what does it say here? Dark truths will come to light. With the aid of a fellow Auschwitz survivor and a handwritten letter, an elderly man with dementia goes in search of the person responsible for the death of his family. So he was in Auschwitz and he is out there looking for the man that killed his family. This is what he does. I think he knows in his moments of lucidity that he is approaching the end, and the last act that he wants to do is to find the man that killed his family, one of the Nazis from Auschwitz, and he goes in search of him. The performance he turns in here is amazing. The story is fantastic. The pacing, all the other actors involved. I thought this was absolutely fantastic. I loved it. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. The reason I didn't give it the 5 is because at the end of the movie, it should have ended on a specific sentence and a specific scene, and I feel it would have been so much more powerful, but it goes on for another maybe 2 minutes in way of explanation to people. I apologise if you hear noise, the dogs have just come in from their walk. But that end little bit just took away a massive power punch that this movie could have been. But still, I adored it. I thought it was amazing. Definitely check it out. It's called Remember. Molly. On the 2nd, I watched a movie on Netflix called The Whole Truth. It is Korean, I believe. 2 siblings stumble upon a strange hole in the wall of their grandparents' house. So their mother has an accident, she's in hospital, and the grandparents sorry, you will hear dog paws, that's Dobby. The grandparents, who the children have never really known, they haven't had a very good relationship with the mother, They take them in and they look after them while the mother's in hospital. And when they're at the grandparents' house, they start uncovering a lot of things that they weren't aware of. There's this hole in the wall that only they can see and their grandparents can't. And it's one of these surreal films where you have to go with the ride, you have to suspend belief, you have to follow what you're watching. I did like a lot about it. I liked how the story went, I liked how it unfolded, I liked where we ended up, I liked the performances. I gave it a 3 out of 5 because again there were little bits that I would have done slightly different. Listen to me, little bits I would have done differently, but there's little bits I would have preferred to have seen handled a little bit differently. But I still do think it's a solid movie. I would recommend that you give it a go. That's a 3 out of 5. And finally, yesterday we watched Venom: Let There Be Carnage. Hello, Dobby. Dobby's here in her strawberry because it's very cold. It's very cold, Dobby, isn't it? She's not a bit interested. So Venom: Let There Be Carnage. I'd heard it wasn't very good. Hello, darling. I'd heard it wasn't very good, and it wasn't very good. That dog, honestly, you would think she was a pig, the noises she makes. Are you coming up as well? This is Molly, if you don't know. There's Molly Strawberry. We've just been on a walk. It's very cold and it's very wet. So, yeah, I preferred the first Venom film. I wasn't actually, I didn't think the first one was that bad. Dobby's scrabbling down here to get up. I didn't think the first one was that bad like other people, but this one I wasn't really a fan of, it has to be said. I give it a 2 out of 5 and I wouldn't recommend. Hello, darling. This poor dog. Look, I don't know that I can lift you both. Come here. Oh, right, I've got them both. Come on. Oh, right, there you go. So yes, that is what I've watched this week. This is Dobby and Molly. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Look, you're pulling my hair now. And I look forward to speaking to you next week. Over and out from Lisa Loves, Dobby and Molly.